So the other day I watched Hereditary for the first time. Um, have you seen it?
No, but and I don't really look for horror movies to watch, but that one actually seemed interesting. The ratings were pretty good, and I kind of liked the cast because most things I've seen the mom Tony Collette in, she's been pretty good.
It was well, you said ratings, and that was interesting because like I watched it on Amazon Prime Video, and it actually had 3 stars, which seems a little low for like such a big movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking at the ratings, and it seemed like 40% of people gave it 5 stars, and then another 40% gave it 1 star. And so that's actually what interested me a little bit about watching the movie. Is I'm like, why are people so split on this? I watched it, and so Tony Collette, it's so weird because the movie it feels kind of split to me, like split in the sense like the first half feels a lot different than the second half, but then also like the acting, like Tony
Good
Collette
actors in that.
especially. Well, yeah, there's good acting. Like so, Alex Wolff, who plays her son in the movie, I'll just say bad actor. I don't think he's very good at acting. Um, at least in this movie, I haven't watched him in anything else. Although his brother was in the Death Note remake, which was also a bad movie.
Hey, Wolf Brothers,
um,
give up.
Go back out into the wild, you wolves. Um, I mean, he had some. The only time I thought his acting was a little bit compelling was when there were some moments where he was quiet and he didn't say anything and he just kind of had like a horrified look. Sometimes when he did that, that was okay, but like when he was actually trying to emote or anything, it didn't work for me. But um, the mom character, Tony Collette, uh, especially early on in the movie, she had really great scenes where she was being very expressive, and it actually made me like very uncomfortable, like how well I felt she was portraying like sorrow and like horror. It was like actually like kind of uncomfortable to watch, which I think is a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
because that was what they were trying to get across. But then like more towards the end of the movie with her, it just sort of became um, I'll call it like horror woman syndrome, where I don't know if it's the direction that they're given or just the actors themselves, but like in horror movies, I feel like a lot of times the women always become like just this like shrieking mess, and they're not
Oh,
really like they're
yeah.
not doing anything anymore. It's just sort of like yelling.
Like
Uh,
what's that movie? The Shining.
yes, so like The Shining, where it's just like it's constant screaming and they're paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think of something recently that I hated was in Stranger Things, the mom in that. It tends to be mom characters,
Yeah.
um, where
Moms and damsels in distresses.
yeah, well, yeah, it's like the other side of the damsel in distress coin, where it's like they're not waiting for anyone to save them. It's more like someone else needs saving, and they're just yelling and leaning against the wall and crying.
Yeah, and it's just a quick aside. It's this is not a horror movie, although it did have a horror director. Mary Jane in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. That was all she was good
Mm.
for. She's just there to scream.
It's just such like a bad thing to do to your characters,
Yeah, it makes them
because
not
like
interesting and it makes you not like them.
yeah, that's exactly it. It just makes me not want to watch them because it's like, well, you're not interesting and you're making a loud noise that's annoying me. Um, but anyways, this is also how I talk to people as well. You're not interesting and you're making a loud noise. Go away. Um, but um, so that was. I'm very torn on the movie because basically her acting is sort of like an analogy for the entire movie, where especially I liked it a lot more early on. Early on, you've got like these sort of interesting characters, and Do you mind if I spoil anything for the movie?
No, go for it.
So the mom, she makes like these dioramas of basically like things in her life. So like she makes these miniatures of like different rooms in her house or whatever with people in them or whatever. And she basically, I guess that's sort of what she does. She's like an artist, but she she makes these things based on like her trauma more or less. It's like when something bad happens or whatever she's trying to process, she makes these dioramas of them.
Okay.
And so they have uh they have a daughter, Charlie, and she's played by Millie Shapiro. And I don't know exactly if she's supposed to be disabled or if she's just like sort of like a shy kid. Um, Charlie, I mean, the character she's playing, and well, later on it's sort of revealed that things aren't quite as the same. But anyway, she ends up dying uh, because of her brother Peter, who's played by Alex Wolff, like I said. She ends up dying, and so the reaction to that scene uh, from Tony Collette was what sort of what I was talking about with how well she was portraying that, how well she was like actually um,
Sorrow.
grieving, yeah. And so like she ends up like uh, making those scenes with her like her miniatures or whatever. Like she makes the scene of her daughter's death, and the daughter died. She had like allergic reaction to nuts um, while she was out at a party with the brother because the mom made him take her along.
Uh huh.
And so he panics and rushes out with her in the car to go to the hospital. And while they're out in the car, uh, she can't breathe. And so she opens up the window
Mm-hmm.
and sticks her head out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they drive right by a telephone pole and it fucking knocks her head off.
Wait, the
Um,
the the little
the
girl.
daughter. Yeah.
Oh shit.
And that happens like pretty early on in the movie. I actually knew that that was going to happen because it was like the one thing I heard about the movie.
Uh huh.
But it happened a lot sooner than I thought. Um, and so that was sort of the moment where I'll just call him Peter. Um, he has the reaction that I was talking about, which is like the one thing I liked from him was just him being like completely shocked and just like staring at the wheel and like not doing anything. And then he just like he drives off with her torso in the back of the car and he just leaves the head on the side of the road.
Jesus
And then
Christ.
he just pulls up to his house, gets out of the car, goes into the house and lays in bed. And so there's just like a shot of him staring. And then it goes to like the following morning, he's still like staring or whatever. And then all of a sudden you start to hear the mom screaming like hysterics. So like that first part of the movie, I mean, that wasn't like the first scene, but like that earlier part of the movie was, I was just like, wow, this is like really uncomfortable. Um, Pretty well done. I'm excited for this. But then it sort of gets into um, sort of like demonic possession and stuff like that. Uh, and I always sort of feel like movies that have that, as soon as they start going into like having like a specific entity, and they always have a scene where like someone does some research in a library or something, and they're like, this is Bahamut, this is whatever. They
Mm-hmm.
start like naming the demon and stuff. I'm kind of like, okay, I'm kind of over this. And there was a scene like that basically where um, her mother was involved in this cult like thing, and um, the mom's mom, so the grandma, was in like this cult like thing, and so she raised Charlie basically,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they sort of had this weird relationship. And I'm trying to. I don't want to talk too much about this movie because like there's a million things I could say, but um, there's like this possession aspect to it, and I didn't really like too much the second half of the movie, but there was a lot of interesting visuals. And one thing I did really like was that this movie didn't really have jump scares.
Okay.
Um, which is always a breath of fresh air because I was actually thinking about this last night. I think like jump scares. At least the problem I have with them is that by like by the nature of the jump scare, it takes you out of the movie.
Yeah.
It has to because the jump scare happens. If it's successful, you jump, and then as soon as you jump, you're back in the real world again.
Yeah.
I feel like good horror, you stay in the movie the whole time. You're just sort of trapped in the movie, and it's just like you get this feeling of like actual fear. Um,
Yeah. It's
so
just,
there was,
it's more about tension, probably.
yeah, exactly. Um, when when the moment comes that all the tension was about, and then it's sort of over. And with jump scares, you're getting that right away,
Yeah.
and you're just like, okay, well now I'm just in my room watching. Like that kind of put me out of it. Um, but so this it didn't really have any jump scares, but there were a couple of good moments where you sort of felt this tension, and but it's weird because like the second half of this, it went between like having this tension and also me like laughing out loud at like some of the sillier things. I don't think it's meant to be funny in any way, but it's sort of like there were things that I'm used to seeing with like really like shitty horror movies.
Uh huh.
Um, and I'll probably try to throw in one of the scenes uh, into this video where so basically at some point um, the mom is possessed by this demon. I think it's Pyman,
Yeah.
and she's like she's up in the corner of the room, like in the corner ceiling, like stuck up against the wall, all creepy looking in the background, while the son's in bed. And he gets up out of bed and he's turned the other way, and she's still like standing up there. And he slowly starts to turn, and as he does, she sort of like flies off in the other direction so he doesn't see her. But when she does, she's making like this weird swimming motion through the air. And I was watching it with my brother, and we both just started laughing really hard. Um, I'll try to find the clip and put it up. Um, it was funny, but then like also it was kind of cool, like because she made these dioramas of real life, and like the way she was up in the corner when she was possessed, it was sort of like how she was looking down at the dioramas, but like sort of in real life. Do you know what I'm saying? Because like she had
Mm,
this like angled upward view of the room that he was in,
uh huh.
and that's sort of how she was looking at the dioramas as like when she was making them.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, and that was sort of interesting, especially because like she was making dioramas about her family, about like her daughter dying, and like her resenting her son, um, and all this shit. So like, there was interesting stuff, and like towards the end, there's very interesting imagery and some pretty creepy stuff. That's not jump scares. It's just like, oh, that's kind of creepy. Um, but they also just fell into the syndrome of okay, as soon as they name a demon, they're like, uh, you start questioning the motivation because like this particular demon um, was supposed to be like he's supposed to bring them prosperity or whatever, like riches. This whole cult around him, but at the same time, it's like, well, none of these, at least of the existing characters, like none of them were like living in mansions or anything. They just had like normal houses. So like, why are they even doing any of this? I don't know. There was a weird disconnect at the end, but that didn't stop the imagery from being cool. So overall, I thought it was okay. Um, some people say it's better the second time you watch it. Um, I don't know. The direction and the imagery was cool, but I just think the execution was just sort of like not great, and the story was not great. But
Yeah. I think I was a lot more interested in the movie when it was a son who fucked up and killed his own sister, and then you start
yes,
bringing in demons and possession and wall flying, and it's just sort of it's not grounded anymore, sort of.
Exactly. And you know, I mean, so many movies do that, but I really thought it was a compelling movie.
Up until that.
Um, yeah, like the first half is sort of its own movie, where all of a sudden you're gonna have this this dynamic where the death of the daughter is sort of the son's fault, but it's sort of not because she looked out the window and then the mom made him take her, so like he'll blame her for that, and then like you've got this uncomfortableness on top of their already weird relationship, and sort of to add something to that. I said this to my brother after we watched it. I said, this could have been, I think it was 2 hours long. Like this could have been a 1 hour movie, and you just cut out all the stuff about the demon,
Yeah, I
and
was
all
just
like the supernatural stuff.
yeah, I was just thinking. I just read the plot summary. So
Mhm.
it says in the beginning that they're at the funeral of the grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and that's where you get introduced to the supernatural side of things. Maybe I think is that what it said? Was it like that?
No, not at the funeral, really. Um, you don't really get introduced to the supernatural stuff until like the second half of the movie, more or less, where um, it was the grandmother who's involved with this stuff, but
Right.
then uh, sort of things start seeping through, um, where like basically the mom. It seems like people are trying to get the mom to do like a séance, um,
Yeah, I saw the word
to talk to the
seance mentioned
to
a few
talk to the
times.
daughter, basically. And what it turns out to be is like they were actually like the cult members who were involved with the grandma who wanted her to do this. Uh, but to her, it's just sort of like, oh, I want to talk to my daughter. But
I
that's sort of what jumps it off to that.
I feel like it would have been a lot more interesting if the son's responsible for the daughter's death, and it sort of makes the mom snap,
Yeah.
and then
Well, she sort of does.
yeah. So, but it's more of a human thing that she snaps,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
maybe there's this tension that she could kill her son now.
Well, so one thing I forgot to mention was that it gets brought up where you learn about the mom. The mom had a problem with sleepwalking before, and I think I think it was when the brother and the sister shared a room or something like that when they were younger. At one point, the mom had woken up during the sleepwalking, and she had both her kids uh, covered in like paint thinner, and she had a match struck, and then she woke up, and the son woke up and was freaking out or whatever. So basically, she tried to kill her kids in her sleep, um, which, as you may know, is like one of my greatest fears of living with people. Is like, oh my god, these people are gonna kill me in my sleep. Um,
I didn't know that.
no,
I do now.
gonna kill me over the airwaves. Um, so you have that aspect where she sort of has this mental instability, and it sort of comes out that she didn't want kids, and like her mother kind of pressured her to have them. We
Yeah.
later find out it's because of like they want a host for the demon or whatever, but
Right.
that would work well as its own story where she's resenting her mother, she's resenting her kids. The mom's dead, that sort of makes her snap, and then her kid dies, who's close to the grandmother, and that sort of makes her snap. And you've got sort of, you think it could be demonic or whatever, but it turns out it's just she's gone crazy. I
Yeah, I
think
think.
that could be its own really compelling story
Yeah, I think.
because I really like that first part.
That sounds a lot better than demons name Pokemon and whatnot.
The Pokemans and I mean there were, I remember there were people in the past who thought that Pokemon was demonic.
Oh boy.
I don't know. It was an interesting movie, but it's got a lot of wasted potential,
Hmm.
and I feel like it should have just cut out all the supernatural stuff and just went with the grounded performance that they started with.